Hey, it's James here, and we are here to talk about bad boss PTSD. Now, this is a real thing. In fact, this came up at one of our coaching meetings the other day with a company we were taking through 9 Minutes on Monday, and somebody brought up, what do I do with this staff member who they had an old boss that they were not great to them, and it still affects them to this day, and so it makes it difficult for me to lead them and to motivate them. And in fact, as soon as they brought that up, other people put their hands up that they were dealing with the same issues. And I totally get this. I've taken over organizations where the leader who was there before me was maybe overly authoritarian, or it was an unhealthy culture. And what happens is people that in a sense work under that, they accumulate a sort of baggage that happens really just out of protection mechanisms. And so what happens when somebody leaves a situation that's toxic or unhealthy? Because often when we're in it, we don't realize how toxic it is or unhealthy it is. It's the same in relationships. Well, this is a relationship that you have with your boss. But then when you leave there, it's like your eyes begin to open up and you realize how much in crazy town you actually were. And so what happens is that employee leaves that old toxic workplace, then they have this realization moment like that was crazy town, and then they typically will make a vow. And the vow goes like this: I will never let myself, be subject to that again, or I will never allow this or this or this again. And so they make this vow, and that's very important on a subconscious level, because what the body does is then it puts up a protective shield, and they take that protective shield to the new workplace, and that can cause all kinds of problems. So if you have an employee who has gone through something where they had an unhealthy boss before, like it was an unhealthy dynamic, you'll often know that because it'll slip out. They'll make little comments here and there about their old workplace or how crazy it was. But if you know that it's getting in the way of them actually succeeding now, then I want to walk you through a conversation that you can have to get the ball rolling, to help them get past that and leave that story behind and elevate themselves to a new beginning with your organization. Okay, so basically, now again, we're not counselors, we're not therapists, but we're leaders, and we can lead people through a process like this. So I'm going to walk you through a conversation that you can have with that staff member. Now, this is not a conversation that you rush. It's not a conversation that you have in public, right, with a lot of people around. It's something that you make time for, and what you're going to do is you're going to create space for them. You're going to create space for them to be able to share about the experience. And so I'm going to walk you through what it might look like as you do this. Right? So this is going to typically be in a one of your one-to-ones. And so basically, you're going to get with them, and you might start out the conversation like this, like, "Hey, Sarah, so I just wanted to talk to you about something, because a few times you've made mention about your old workplace and your old boss. And honestly, it doesn't sound like it was a very fun place to work. I'm just going to leave that open." And they're probably going to validate that and say, "Yeah, totally. It was no fun. And I can't believe I stayed there as long as I did. I was just so glad to get out of there." And then what you want to do is you want to ask permission if you can talk about that. Say, "Hey, do you mind if I just ask you some questions about that? I'm just curious about what went on there." And if they are like, "Well, no, I don't want to talk about it," then, hey, conversation's over, right? Until maybe some time has gone and maybe some more trust has been built between the two of you. But typically people will go, "Yeah, hey, no problem. What questions do you have?" And you might first start out just by, like, "Just tell me a little bit more about, like, what was the situation like?" And they're just going to share a bunch of things, right? Like venting, like, "It was this and it was that, and my boss was, always micromanaging us, or when we would have ideas, like the way he would speak to us was so belittling." And as they're sharing, if they're not answering naturally these two questions, I want to make sure that I ask them, in that situation, like, what did you dislike most? Like, obviously there was a lot of unhealthy things, but what were the things that you disliked the most? And they're going to go ahead and share that. Those are going to be the biggest pain points. And the follow-up question, if they don't answer it in the first one, is, how did that make you feel? Or how did that affect you? right? And so the whole time we're listening, we're empathizing. We're not giving advice. We're not telling them how to get over that or whatever. We're just making space for them. Yeah, how did that make you feel? How did that affect you? And Sarah might say, I totally hated my job. I dreaded Monday morning. Honestly, I felt like my confidence took a hit. I almost didn't apply for this job because I didn't think I had the skills, so I know that. And I feel like it made me distrust more people in the workplace. All right, so she's going to tell you some things. And of course, the whole time, what you're doing is just listening, like I said, empathizing, validating. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And then here's a key question. Do you think this still affects you now in some ways? And they might say, no, not at all. But typically they'll say, yeah, if I'm honest, I think it still affects me like this way. Hey, no offense, but I have a little bit more distrust of management when they say they're going to do something, and now I'm kind of like, well, I'll wait and see. Or maybe they'll say like, yeah, I don't tell my coworkers as much about my life as I did before because somebody used it against me, right? So I'm asking, how do you think that affects you? How so? Again, validating. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah. Hey, who could blame you? Who could blame you for thinking like that? Who could blame you for feeling that way? Anyone would. I would. Right? And so what we're doing is we're just normalizing their feelings. We're validating that from the situation. It's not a time to judge their feelings like, well, why would you feel that? Why would you think that hurts your confidence? You're in charge of what you feel about yourself. Bad time for that, right? That's not the time for motivational speech. You're just listening. You're just filling out the picture. And then what we're going to do is, this is going to be important, another important question. We're going to make a shift here because we're now going to bring to present day. And you're going to ask the question, hey, do you ever, and this is a chance for you to fill in any things that maybe you're noticing in a very subtle way. Like, hey, do you ever feel like at meetings you have ideas, but then you hesitate to share them? Now, they might say yes or no to that. They might say, yeah, totally, all the time. And say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Or do you ever feel like when I'm giving you performance feedback that you might have a tendency to take it more personal? Do you ever feel that? Now, they might say no. They might say, yeah, I've noticed that. I've noticed that I'm a bit more sensitive to criticism. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I could see that. Right, so we're just filling in the picture a bit more, do you ever? And then what we're going to do is we're going to make another transition here and basically say something to the effect to Sarah, say like, hey, I'm sorry you had to go through that, by the way, and no one should have to be in that kind of a setting, or no one should have to have a manager like that, or I've had a boss like that. It wasn't fun either, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. But listen, I want you to know something, or I want you to know a few things. And this is where you have a chance to clearly outline your values or how you operate as a leader. Hey, listen, I'm sorry that you went through that, but I want you to know a couple of things. Number one, I will never treat you that way, the way that your old boss treated you. Number two, when I give you performance feedback, it's because I really believe in you and I feel like you can do better. It's not personal at all. It's just I have so much belief in you. And I also want you to know I will never let somebody be disrespectful to you. Even if somebody says something stupid, I will deal with it. I promise you that. I want you to know that. And I also want you to know that you can come and talk to me and challenge me if you feel like I'm not making good on some of these commitments, okay? So I'm going to make that statement. Now, for that person, it doesn't mean that that's going to fix everything. Like, oh, okay, I believe you. Like I believe the last person who then, was a terrible boss. But it's your chance to say that. And then you're going to ask this question. Hey, Sarah, what can I do to help you to... Hey, Sarah, what can I do to help you so that when I do give you feedback on something where I feel like you need to do better, what can I do to help you take that less personally? Or what can I do to help you so that when you're in a meeting and I know you have great ideas. What can I do to help you to share those with us? Or what can I do to help you, like whatever it is? You're going to ask that because you're sincerely listening, because you're wanting to help. You're wanting to get ideas, but maybe more importantly, you're wanting Sarah to know this place is different and I'm here to help you and I'm on your side. Okay? And so what this sets up is an initial conversation for that employee to understand that a couple of things. Number one, hey, my boss actually cares about me, took the time to have this conversation. Number two, we outlined some of the things that I hated from my last job and even how that spilled over and how I don't want to bring that forward in my new job. Thirdly, my boss has asked for some ways to, like, how can I help? And this will set up future coaching conversations so that, let's say 2 weeks down the road, you need to give performance management to Sarah. And so you go and talk to her and you notice that all of a sudden she's really pulled back and taken it personally. And so what you're going to say to her is like, hey, by the way, like, remember we talked about this? I don't want you to take this personally. I believe in you so much. And you're just going to check in with her. And then it's going to take some time for them to realize this truly is a different place. And as they learn that this is a different place, they begin to drop their walls more and give themselves more to your organization. And that's so important because that's where you're going to get the best out of them. That's where they're going to shine. That's where they're going to be happiest. And you know what? A whole bunch of healing happens in that process. And that's a conversation you can have with somebody who has old boss PTSD. All right, hope that helps. And take your time with that. But it's a really important conversation. It's a great way to serve your staff.